Lore Together is proud to be part of the Boss Rush Games Network. Feel free to find out more at bossrushgames.com/network. Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife team go over all this storytelling, world building, and characters of video games because it's what we like to do together. We lore together.
Yep, and this is episode 116.
Mystic gave a face for a moment being like, am I sure? I'm sure.
Look, a couple episodes I mistitled our upload, so all of them were 113 and then 113 again.
So we fixed that, by the way. But, yes. And if you ever catch anything else that you need us to fix, Mystic, what can I do?
Oh, believe me, I am expecting a ton of notes on this episode. Luckily, the people who will leave us notes know where to do that. But if you don't know where to do that, Instagram, Blue Sky, Mastodon, Reddit, YouTube, Steam, not so much for notes, but you can say hi to us there.
Yes.
And Discord, all in the description down below. Or you can email us at loretogether@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast, and we hope you do, there's two ways you can do that. First is giving us a good review wherever you are listening. That really helps a lot. The other way is through Patreon at patreon.com/loretogether, where you can pay a per episode pledge, so it's only when we release episodes, to get early access to those episodes, early access to our Let's Plays, which are going up again. Yeah.
Woohoo!
As well as the ability to vote for future episodes and vote for what is happening in our public Let's Plays, such as Firewatch, which is happening right now, and Mass Effect 2, which is approaching.
It is approaching. So by the fall, maybe right before the fall, we'll be at Mass Effect 2.
We're only going to be in Firewatch for about 4 episodes, I'd say. 4 or 5. So
okay. So yeah, but that's going to be
by the end of summer.
Yeah, by the end of summer, yeah. Interesting choice. Summer game is Firewatch. That worked out pretty well for us. But Mystic, you chose this episode.
I did not choose this episode specifically.
Oh!
Our patrons have voted for this. In fact, there was one vote for this topic.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you what it is yet, but we've been here before.
Okay.
We've been to this franchise before.
Is this Elder Scrolls?
This is Elder Scrolls.
Okay. Because the way that you're feeling frantic and uncertain about everything, even though you've done tons of research, there's very few series where I feel like you don't have a handle on what's going on. Or at least, I should say, you typically do have a handle on anything you research, but very rarely do you feel like you don't.
Elder Scrolls, more than most things that we cover, loves to play with the unreliable narrator.
That's true. It does do that.
And so when I find a source that says one thing, I will take that as the main thing, and I may not find that other one line on a
that
wiki or whatever that counters it.
Okay.
We did have quite a few notes for our last episode on Tiber Septim, but that was to be expected. We get notes every time we do Elder Scrolls, and we also get this was still a good episode from those people.
Yes.
So,
well, because I think Mystic, you get at least about 90 to 95% of it, right? It's always just that extra little details in that 5 to 10%.
But usually after this episode goes, after our Elder Scrolls episodes go live, you can find a giant errata
in the Discord
by our patrons and friends who are Elder Scrolls fans. Especially, like, we usually get plenty of notes and feedback from Aramithius, who is part of the Written in Uncertainty podcast, and was also our guest spot on our 100th episode celebration, talking about someone we will mention. Does that clue you in at all?
So wait, because he read the story that was so chaotic that I could, but it was definitely some sort of almost God origin, like
kind of, yeah,
origin story thing. I'm sorry, it was a while ago now.
So we are doing the first era of Morrowind. Subtitle: The Chimer, the Velothi, and the Dunmer. Now, there's also a bit of repetition there. The Chimer and the Velothi are synonyms. as far as I can tell.
Oh, what?
Yeah. But rule of threes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Fair.
it especially makes sense when you're talking about the setting for Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind.
Okay.
Don't worry too much. I'm going to toss a lot of names at you.
I'm just going to get smacked with names. Okay.
All the names.
All the names.
We'll start in modern day, quote unquote, Morrowind.
Okay.
Okay. So it is the province in the northeast corner of Tamriel. We did cover this over 100 episodes ago.
Oh, God. Okay. Oh, man. That's been like 4 years now.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And is the home of the Dunmer. It is dominated by the large island of Vardenfell and its centerpiece, the ash-spewing Red Mountain.
Okay.
But it also includes territory on the continental mainland. Okay. And Solstheim is an island in the sea near Morrowind that is traditionally not been associated with any province.
Oh.
But by the time we get to Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, it is considered part of Morrowind.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Morrowind is essentially where the Dunmer are from. Are we going to be touching upon how...
They are from there, but they're not from there.
Because the Dunmer weren't always Dunmer either, right?
Right.
So
that's what we're going through.
Okay, cool. Because I think this is always something that I found very interesting.
So, Morrowind is the seat of intense volcanic activity that shapes its land masses. Mm-hmm. The Velothi Mountains separate Morrowind from Skyrim, and the Velis Mountains separate it from Cyrodiil. As a result of this isolation, Morrowind has developed a unique and frankly alien-looking ecosystem, and it's pretty freaky. Like, playing Morrowind is definitely a unique feeling compared to the European high fantasy of Oblivion and the Nordic fantasy of Skyrim.
Right. Did they have any specific inspiration for Morrowind itself where they got their feel, their lore, their idea of how the world would be shaped?
I did not delve into the development history.
Okay.
So I do not know.
Okay.
Getting to the people, the Dunmer are the gray-skinned, typically red-eyed elven people of Morrowind. And I say Dunmer here, but some may know them better as, quote, dark elves.
And I want to say, when we say gray-skinned, it's kind of like a gray-blue as well.
It's a gray-blue or very dark blue.
Yes. And on top of that, their eyes, there's like variations of how bright the red is, but it's definitely
it goes from black to red, kind of.
Yeah, it goes, but it definitely stays in that like red, blood red or wine red kind of hue.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any lighter than that.
Not really.
Or any more orange. Sorry.
Dark elves is more common in the Empire, like in Cyrodiil, in Skyrim, you hear dark elf more. However, the Dunmer and their Mer brethren prefer the term Dunmer. Dark can be interpreted as meaning dark-skinned, gloomy, ill-favored.
Yeah.
You know, which the Dunmer and their national identity kind of embrace those various connotations. Like, we're going to retake this.
Right, we reclaim what we've been called, exactly.
Yeah. On the battlefield, Dunmer are noted for their skill with many combat techniques, swords, bows, and destruction magic in particular. Dunmer live 2 to 3 times as long as humans, with a 200-year-old Dunmer being old and a 300-year-old Dunmer being very, very old.
Yes.
However, to understand the history of the modern-day Dunmer, we have to go and talk about the Aldmer and the Chimer.
And it's interesting you say modern day. So when you say modern day, you mean Skyrim, which was the most recent release?
I mean everything that is after the second era. You kind of get a little bit of this in the second era with Elder Scrolls Online, but I have not played much of Elder Scrolls Online and have not delved into it.
You haven't played that in over a year or so, have you?
Right, and the storyline there is so large, so convoluted. There's lists of heroes from the Elder Scrolls franchise, and they're all like the hero of Kvatch, the Dragonborn, the Neverine. You have like all these single things. For Elder Scrolls Online, you have like the Vestige, the this. There's like 14 or 15 different names because you've done that many big things.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah. And there's some games that are so obscure we will never probably cover them.
Okay.
We're talking like ancient Java-based cell phone games.
That's fair. Yeah, we probably won't ever cover. We can't. I don't even know how we could live stream that.
we would not be able to live stream. There are like obscure emulators that could do it, but it's not worth it.
No.
And these games, the entire story is 4 paragraphs. So.
Oh, okay.
But even those, you have the prisoner, so you still have the hero names. But yeah, Elder Scrolls Online just has a ton of them because you do that much stuff. That many quest lines are open to you.
And you probably do it out of order, so to speak, depending on your level and everything. So. And
in fact, while I'm talking about Elder Scrolls Online, the quest that I first started as, which has you waking up in Cold Harbor, which is Molag Bal's realm, is not the start anymore. You have a different start now, and if you want to do that, you have to go track that quest down, and then you can do it. So it's changed so much since I played it. So to talk about the Aldmer and the Chimer, we have to go and leave Morrowind and head to the Summerset Isles, home of the modern-day Altmer, or High Elves.
Yes, which if you played the first part of the plotline in Skyrim, you immediately are just grimace thinking of them.
Yeah. And we're going all the way back in time to the middle to late Merithic era.
Okay.
Remember that Skyrim is in the 4th era, and most of the games are in the 3rd era until you get to Oblivion, which is the ending of the 3rd era, going into the 4th. And Elder Scrolls is solidly in the 2nd era. And again, we're not going to cover that anytime soon. That's why we're stopping this at the 1st era.
You mean Elder Scrolls Online particularly, yes, is in the 2nd era.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why we're not doing the 2nd era of Morrowind, because I don't want to touch Elder Scrolls Online yet.
Okay, that's fair. It's probably a lot.
Anyway, we are back here in the early days to catch up with Veloth, an Aldmeri, not Altmer, noble. So Aldmer is the term for the first people, or the Elder Ones, and they're the people from the Summerset Isles that would eventually migrate all over the continent of Tamriel, and as they migrated over generations, they evolved into the different the elf races that we know in the modern era, the Bosmer, the Dunmer, the Altmer, I believe even the Orcs, the Orsimer, I think.
Yes, Orcs are technically part of that too.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
I don't know if the Dwemer are part of that. Someone's going to have to check that on me, because the Dwemer, we'll get there why I'm confused about it.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and that makes, we don't really meet the Dwemer in the games either.
I believe there is one that we meet in Morrowind.
Okay.
But just one.
Just one, because every other time you see them, it's remnants of their civilization.
Yes. So despite being a noble, Veloth viewed his homeland with relative disdain, as he believed the Aldmeri society was founded on ambition, greed, and decadence. Mm-hmm. And seeking a more ascetic, stoic, and pure way of life for his followers, Veloth inscribed the Velothi prophecies, with the core belief being that mortals could ascend to godhood.
Like Talos, but we're not going to get into that today.
We're not getting into that. This abandoned the worshipping of the Aedra in favor of the Daedric princes Boethia, Azura, and Mephala, collectively known as the, quote, good Daedra. Now, for reference, since it's been over 100 episodes since we dove into the Aedra and the Daedra.
Oh, man.
Boethia is deceit, conspiracy, secret plots of murder, assassination, treason, unlawful overthrow of authority, basically just all that baggage. Mm-hmm. Mephala is murder, lies, deception, sex, secrets, and is always weaving this web of intrigue and terror.
Yes.
In fact, there was a cut quest in Skyrim where Mephala would have you kill Jarl Bolgruf.
Oh, wow.
through his children. Like, she's talking to them, and you find out that they're talking to this weird person behind a door, but it's Mephala. Yeah. Anyway, that was cut. Azura is the, quote, best by our mortal moral standards. Mystery and magic, fate and prophecy, vanity and egotism. Also, Azura tends to actually care about the well-being of her followers. I say her quotes because Daedric princes can just appear however they want.
When you have divine power, I think of all the things that you're worried about. Gender isn't one of them.
Right. Now, Veloth also instructed his followers on how to carefully negotiate with the bad Daedra, who we also discussed way back. We don't need to name them here. We went through all of them over 100 episodes ago.
Yes.
But like Sheogorath, Molag Bal, Mehrunes Dagon. Sorry, just names are popping into my head. And it was partially this ability to distinguish the good from the bad that many took as a hallmark of his status as a living saint.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So, huge amount of charisma, noble, some little healing power, builds up this huge following.
So we have basically a holy figure starting a new religion of some sort, I'm assuming.
And the priest of Trinimac, one of the most powerful of the Aedra, who we touched on briefly back in the...
Episodes and episodes ago?
We'll get to why they were not part of the 8 Aedra.
Uh-huh.
But the priests of Trinimac condemned the dissidents for blasphemy, threatening them with exile should they remain devoted to the teachings of Veloth. They were so reviled that the Daedric shrines that they wanted to build had to be built in secret, out-of-the-way places, much like we see in Oblivion and Skyrim, where all the Daedric shrines are out in the countryside, away from the cities.
Right, because nobody wants to admit any association with them whatsoever.
Right.
It's kind of like that hidden statue in the Legend of Zelda games, which is like, hey, do you want to trade your stamina for some mana? Well, not mana, for some heart.
Which is next to Hateno Village in Breath of the Wild.
Yes.
And then underneath what the remnants are of Castletown in Tears of the Kingdom. So it's near major cities and stuff, or major settlements, but it's not in them. You're right. Yeah.
Right. Just always far enough that you can deny association.
And yet close enough that you can get there from a travel point, a shrine or whatever.
Yeah. This feels like, I feel like there has to be some business on the highway that's similar to this in real life. Well, I'll just say this feels like certain specifically curated truck stop stores.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think we'll leave it at that because we're a family-friendly show.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right. I interrupted, as I always do.
Now, as I said, we did touch on Trinimac back in our Aedra and Daedra episodes, but for a refresher, Trinimac was one of the most powerful Aedra, but was tricked by Boethia and was subsequently devoured by Boethia.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. The, how do I handle this? The residue of that meal apparently...
The remnants of that meal, you mean? Okay. Not the residue. Because that's suggesting that Boeth didn't lick their plates. I think what you mean to say are the
excrement.
Yes, the excrement resulting from said meal.
Became Malakath, which is another Daedra. But that's also considered anti-orc propaganda.
What?
Because the orcs revere Malakath.
But I see what's going on. All right. I mean, that is a transformative process. There are. This reminds me of the coffee beans that have to be eaten by...
The Kapiluak?
Yes, that have to be eaten by the monkey in order to be able to have it. And apparently...
It's a cat creature, I think?
Oh, it's a cat creature, but people call it a monkey. And then,
I don't know about that. I'm literally going off of
because it's in trees and it, people get confused.
I'm literally going off of one obscure scene in a CSI episode.
Yeah, I remember when it was big to say, like, oh, yeah, I'm totally drinking this coffee that was essentially eaten and then pooped out by a cat. Yes.
I hope those beans are cleaned really well.
All I'm saying is, you don't always knock it. Some people revere the craziest stuff.
We are on the weirdest tangent.
You're the one who brought in the Daedra. That was just going to happen.
It's fair. Now, some sources claim that it was Boethia herself who influenced Veloth's decision to reject the Aedra through dreams and visions, which of course would make all of this Boethia's plan, which is right in line for the Daedric princes, especially Boethia, who is, plots and conspiracy and
exactly.
Eventually, Veloth and his followers have to leave, embarking on a mass pilgrimage from the Summerset Isles to the northeast of Tamriel with the promise of a new land and a better future. Mm-hmm. He left carrying his huge Daedric warhammer called Veloth's Judgment, which apparently cleanses corruption.
That's an interesting way.
But I can't see it doing it, because in the game files for Morrowind, it puts like points of fire on your target, drains their agility, and transfers fatigue from you to your target. So I don't know how that cleanses corruption, but okay.
I think the idea is you're only striking things that are truly corrupt, that you're selective in what you choose to cleanse.
Well, going off of the wiki, and I'm going off my notes here, as in it's not in my notes, I remember it saying that he was so accurate that he could leave the non-corrupt part of the soul intact.
Yeah, so it's about the combination of skill with a tool that is so exactingly a process towards cleansing.
Yeah.
So it's like, sorry, I only need your left foot because the rest of your soul's fine. Because that's how
that's
it works.
where the poison is.
That's where the poison is.
According to the contemporary text, Veloth spared not a boat, ration, or strong-armed soul among his people in this exodus and toiled to reach the land of Resdayn. I think that's how that's pronounced. I'm not sure. It's Resdayn. So Resdayn is what would become known later in the Second Era as Morrowind. It's just kind of like the historical name for that place.
Okay.
It has another name that comes before Resdayn. We'll get there. We're tracking the Dunmer. And
the Dunmer specifically right now. Okay.
This pilgrimage was known at the time as the Great Despair. And Veloth and his followers traveled for weeks, crossing the sea and climbing mountains. Many among the Chimer were dismayed and began to think that this was all folly, but they were swayed and inspired by Veloth's leadership, his unyielding certainty, and his commitment. Veloth's drive is basically due to a vision he had in a dream where he saw a giant hawk in the sky and vowed that the hawk would lead the Chimer to a new home. So yeah. According to legend, as most of this is, they finally reached a great pass cutting through a mountain range covered in snow, but a large wall of ice blocked their path. A young woman, who is in fact an aspect of Boethia, but they don't know that, appeared before Veloth and demanded that he swear an oath before she would lead them to their new home. Veloth casts aside Veloth's judgment and vows to never slay another foe and to dedicate his life and soul to his people. The young woman melts the wall of ice and reveals a land of fungus and ash, Resdayn.
Oh.
The legends also say that when Veloth first laid eyes upon Resdayn, a single tear slid down his cheek and froze into a crystal. It would become a holy relic, allegedly imbued with healing and restorative powers.
Interesting.
After renouncing all ties to the Aldmer, Veloth's followers became known as the Chimer and founded a new nation based on Daedric principles.
Okay.
And it is actually very telling. When you play Oblivion, you are inundated with the 8 divines. You're told by the Emperor about the 8 divines. You are...
Yes.
It's the opening sequence that Patrick Stewart talks to you about and everything.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
The opening video in Skyrim. There's the whole thing between the 8 divines and the 9 divines. And
yeah, that's a big deal.
In Morrowind, the opening sequence is Daedric Princess talking to you.
Oh, they're just straight up coming and saying, hey, what's up?
It's Azura basically telling, I will watch over you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, Morrowind's a different thing.
They're on their own stuff. Okay. All right.
The Chimer settled the area and rapidly flourished, enjoying a period of high culture known to many as the Golden Age. It was not without some conflict, though. The Dwemer had been living in Morrowind for so long that we actually have no records of their early days.
They just have been there for as long as the word's been written.
I believe it was called Dwemerith before. They called it Resdayn.
So they did a colonialism.
They pulled a colonialism.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know how the Dwemer thing works. I didn't want to dive into the history of the Dwemer because that sounds like that would become its own episode.
Or two-parter even, depending on how deep we go.
Oh, there have been whole videos on what happened to the Dwemer.
Oh, I imagine. Yes, I can see it now.
We'll touch on that a tiny bit.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. So I know that my knowledge of the Dwemer is severely lacking.
Okay.
And the Chimer had continual conflict also with the native Neds, Neds, and the Orcs who also lived in Morrowind.
Wait, the Neds.
The Neds are basically prehistorical humans, from what I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they basically were all over Tamriel, but
like
they are
Neanderthal-ish, kind of?
Kind of? I don't know. But they're definitely like all over Tamriel, but before the Mer get out there and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. But I wonder if that's where Nedic Basin comes from now. Anyway, that's just idle.
Now, how do they feel about white wine spritzers?
I'll have a white wine spritzer.
How do they look in ski suits?
Fabulous. Regardless of the conflicts, the Chimer prospered. All manner of cultural advances are attributed to Boethia, from philosophy to magic to reasonable architecture and spirituality. One of the first Chimeric settlements in Resdin was named in honor of Veloth. Narcissus, where all fervently praised the prophet Veloth, which was later shortened to Narcissus.
Interesting. Okay. That's kind of like Truth and Consequences, New Mexico, and the naming convention vibe right there.
As I said earlier, the Chimer had to build shrines in secret in the Summerset Isles, but now there's no need for secrecy. Mm-hmm. So they build these giant temples to Boethia, Azura, and Mephala.
Okay. Yeah.
Eventually, though, as with many societies, the Velothi fractured into tribal cultures, which in time evolved into the great houses: Indoril, Redoran, Telvanni, Hlalu, Dres, and Dagoth.
Wow. Around
240 of the first era, so we've now moved forward into the next era, the Nords under King Vrage, Vrage, conquered all of Morrowind, making it part of the first empire of the Nords.
Okay.
And the Nords' use of the Thu'um, or their dragon tongue,
yes,
was used against the Chimer and made them practically unstoppable. Now, I found records that say that the Nords didn't conquer Vardenfell, and some records that said that they conquered all of Morrowind, which would include Vardenfell.
In theory, yes.
Again, Elder Scrolls plays fast and loose with the unreliable narrator.
But also, I just find it hilarious that essentially the Chimer were overtaken by just a bunch of big screaming Nordic dudes. Bah! just like yelling at them. It's just literally barking them down. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an image.
Yeah, but you have to remember that every single piece of lore that we have is written or spoken by somebody in game. We don't have... Right. We do have books, but those are beta canon, I think. I don't think they're alpha canon.
Wait, wouldn't beta canon be higher than alpha canon?
No.
Okay, never mind. People prioritize their alphabet, their Greek alphabet, differently depending on the situation.
When you come to canonicity, alpha canon is... this is a term that comes from TVs mostly, but usually, especially Star Trek. Let's say Star Trek. So in Star Trek, alpha canon is anything that's been on screen.
Okay.
Beta canon is anything that is from a novel, comic, toy line, whatever. It is considered canon unless alpha canon supersedes it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Is there gamma canon?
I do not know.
I want to know.
Talk about the gamma quadrant.
That's gamma canon right there. There you go. We figured it out, guys.
All the Trekkies are just angry now. But essentially what I'm saying is that every single piece of in-game deep lore that we get is either written or spoken by people who have their own biases or are misinformed or are telling the truth, but we have no way of knowing.
All right.
Mm-hmm. However, in 416 of the First Era, following almost 2 centuries of suppression by the Nords, the Chimeric hero Indoril Nerevar united the squabbling great houses. Also made an alliance with the Dunmer, which is a bit surprising considering they are generally enemies because of that whole we're going to invade and take over Morrowind.
Yeah, so I'm guessing the conversation was this. We understand we did a colonialism, and that was not the coolest thing we could have done. But how would you like to be double colonized? No? No? Only single layer colonized? Let's work together this time.
So they succeeded.
Also the yelling. I can imagine that after a point the
yelling just doesn't stop. My ears are killing me. Let's just join forces and kick them out.
Exactly. It's just like you have 2 neighbors and one of them is just kind of like a creepy witchy Wiccan people, and you're like, man, this is weird, but at least they take out the trash and their dog is not barking at me anymore. I can deal with it. And then suddenly there's this other neighbor in the HOA
and they're cranks it to 11 and
death metal guttural screaming all the time, talking about the purity of the strength of their people, and you're just like, guys, no, what are we going to do? And the creepy neighbor that you first thought you never really got along with is suddenly like, how do we vote him out of the HOA? And you're like, yes, we are friends now. We are friends. I just want to tinker. Man. Okay. All right. Headcanon is just like, my headcanon just keeps growing and growing as you're talking about this.
You're going to love some of these names. So they unite to
I have to do the fan fiction that is essentially the HOA that's just a metaphor for the history of Elder Scrolls now. I don't think you understand what you've done to my soul at this point.
So they unite. Nerevar and Dwemer leader Dumak Dwarf King.
That's his name?
That's his name.
Wait, they're so creative about names in this series, and this is a guy who's just Dwarf King?
So, you have to remember, they're called the dwarves, but they're actually called the Dwemer.
Yes.
So it's like, is he Dwarf King because he's a dwarf, or are they called dwarves because he's a dwarf king?
I mean, and also, how many holes are they digging? Like... I'm so punchy today. I'm sorry.
Diggy Hole?
Yes!
Diggy Hole, the Elder Scrolls version. That is a meme that is now 12 years old.
I don't care. I'm so happy to know it exists. Okay. I'm just being old on the internet now. I'm sorry.
What was that? The Dwarven metal band? I forget their name. But they do like Dwarven metal. And they did Diggy Hole.
Wait, and then,
I'll link it in the description for everybody.
And also, for 2020... they did the Eurodance version so people could dance at home to it. So you have to link that one too.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, moving on.
So Nerevar and Dumak Dwarf King subsequently create the First Council of Restian, which is interesting. The dwarves are like, all right, fine, we'll call it what you call it.
Yeah, what an interesting compromise there.
Yeah, but they jointly rule the area as an independent nation.
Okay.
Restian flourished for a few hundred years until Dagoth informs Nerevar that the Dwemer are basically using the heart of Lorkhan, which we discussed way back in episode 4 or 5.
Yeah, so wait.
Actually, 3 or 4. Yeah.
Lorkhan's a Daedra?
So Lorkhan, we're talking way, way back. We're talking.
I know.
We're talking the creation myth, which involves all that stuff. And then during part of this, Lorkhan... I am having trouble remembering my own notes from this, but
those notes are 3.5 years old. That's
right.
Why.
I don't even know where they are anymore.
They're probably 4 years old, actually. Yeah.
But my remembrance is Lorkhan kind of tricked the other Aedra into creating, not into creating Nirn, into giving magic. I think it was.
Yes.
And then as punishment, his heart was ripped from him and like thrown into the distance, and like
so basically
that distance is Morrowind.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Dwemer found this and said, this is useful.
Yes, pretty much.
Okay.
So they're using the Heart of Lorkhan as a power source for the Numidian, a giant brass construct that we mentioned back in episode 93 when we discussed Tiber Septim.
Okay.
Basically, it's the Dwarven Liberty Prime.
Okay. All right, then.
They call it the Brass God. So
it does have a god's heart, so that would seem...
Also, the Dwemer are... You live in a world where you have supernatural beings that literally can control reality.
Yes.
And the Dwemer are essentially atheist.
This, again, your issue with this is the same issue I have with Shane from Stardew Valley. The evidence for something...
Which episode was that? That was...
Oh my gosh. I forget how many episodes ago that was. But the evidence that there fantastical things happen in your world is as plain as day. Yet you decide to say, I only believe what science believes. It's like, okay, now did you consider that thing that's a high energy source in your construction is from a god? Like, come on.
But also the Dwemer, I don't think they deny the existence.
They're just...
I think they think that their mechanics and like the Numidian are equivalent. And like, we can build stuff that's just as powerful, so you're not God.
This is the kind of stuff that gets put in commandments so that you can't worship what man creates.
It is a brass god.
Yes. Yes, literally.
Make it out of gold, then you'd have a more concrete... Anyway.
Right.
So anyway, the Chimer, who are worshipping the Daedra and stuff,
Yes.
generally see this as pretty heretical and profane. So
they see this heart and they go, this is going to ruin the tour.
Don't throw memes from like today in.
Yeah,
just
no,
dating it more.
No, we're gonna date this as much as possible now.
Oh God, okay. The tensions quickly boil over, leading to the War of the First Council between the secular Dunmer and the Orthodox Chimer houses Induril, Redoran, Dres, Lalu, and Tilvani. You may notice that House Dagoth is not listed there, and that's because they may have sided with the Dwemer.
Oh,
However,
fair.
some sources say they stayed loyal to their kin, so where the reality is, I don't know.
That sounds like there was some betrayal going on, and considering the Daedra that the Chimer are messing with, yeah, that could happen pretty easily and be justified.
Number two, House Dagoth becomes a problem. Like, they are a problem later in the First Era, and the remnants of their house are a problem in the Third Era. In fact, Dagoth
Yes.
is one of the, I think, the antagonist of Morrowind.
Also, what a name.
Yeah.
Like, that's... Like, when you said Dagoth I didn't realize that their family name comes first.
Yeah.
So the fact that somebody looked at this child and said, that will be your name. I'm like, wow, what a vibe.
Yeah. The secular Dwemer waged war against the Chimer Great Houses as well as the nomadic Ashlanders of Vardenfell. So the Ashlanders are kind of... We'll get to them, but they're essentially the people who are on the outskirts of society. They're the underclass of society. And all of the great houses and the Ashlanders actually all unite under General Induril Nerevar. So in the midst of this fight with General Induril Nerevar, the Nords of Skyrim under King Wulfharth also jump in with a bunch of their own ally orcs as they fight to reclaim the territory.
Jeez.
For the first empire of the Nords.
No, guys, this party is way too crowded now. Man, shut it down.
And in the aftermath of the final clash, we're not even going to get into that war. Like, there's
I'm
too many forces involved
that
there.
Could be a whole episode on its own, too.
Possibly. I didn't dive into it. I just was like, let's focus on the Chimer. Let's not get into...
I like the idea that Mystic is looking at all his research, and he's like, we don't have time for this. We must move on.
It's not even just that. Like, every single person you click on in this thing has other things that they are part of elsewhere in the world or later eras, or their ghosts come back, or... So
it's a very important time to the history here.
It's and not just that. Every single... okay, maybe Alvor in Skyrim doesn't have a lot of stuff going on once you get past his little part in Riverwood.
Yeah.
But you click on Jarl Bulgriff, you'll then find Mephala, you'll click Mephala, you'll find it's just spiderwebs so much.
Okay.
And yes, using spiderwebs and Mephala was planned in my brain.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you. In the aftermath of the final clash, the Dwemer mysteriously disappear.
This feels very suspicious.
Nerevar is dead.
Whoa, okay.
House Dagoth is dissolved and assimilated into the other houses.
Okay.
And lastly, but most importantly, a new religion is born, revering Nerevar's counselors as the living gods of the tribunal.
Oh, this isn't good.
We have the General Vivek, which is Vivek's a warrior poet, and it was one of his, I forget what they're called, the Lessons of Vivek, I think.
Yes. But
that was what Eremithius was reading in our 100th episode.
Oh, man, that whole thing was insane.
One of 36, I believe.
Yes.
The sorcerer, Sothasil, and his wife, Almalexia. Now, it's funny because these are also known as Almsylvi. Like, you can see readings to the Almsylvi, which is Almalexia, Sil, and Vivek. Almsylvi. So.
Oh, interesting.
But anyway, so these three, called the Tribunal, basically stole the power from the heart of Lorkhan for themselves, became immortal, and therefore broke an oath with Nerevar and Azura. Now, Azura is understandably ticked off.
Yeah.
curses the Chimer of Morrowind and the Tribunal, forever linking them, and also makes the Chimer's skin dark ash-colored and their eyes red.
Okay. So that's where their aesthetic came from, is that they're carrying the mark. And so I guess it doesn't matter how involved you were in the decision, because your countrymen and those who shared faith with you decided to go for, which, P.S., with the Daedra that they were worshiping, morally, that doesn't seem like the worst choice. Power for power's sake, why not?
Right. Almalexia and Sothasil, if I remember correctly, look mostly Chimer when we see them. But Vivek is half Chimer, half Dunmer. Like, literally split down the middle.
So we should probably, in case there are people who don't understand the aesthetic looks between the Dunmer and their modern peers, which are the Bosmer and the Altmer.
Yeah.
And also don't know what the Chimer originally looked like, right?
Yeah.
So we already described what the Dunmer looked like earlier in this episode. The Altmer kind of have more of a goldish hue to them.
The Chimer look more like the Altmer. They're more,
right.
It's more of like a human skin tone. They look more like the regular, like if you took the Altmer, Bosmer, and there's one I'm forgetting, and I always forget it. Because it is the Bosmer. Never mind.
Yeah, no. You remember? I was like, no, you've got them all. So, because
but it looks basically, the Altmer look more golden later. All the Aldmer look more like the Bosmer do, like more humanish.
Yeah, because the Bosmer are much more, earth tones, much more human looking, because they're kind of just variations of like a tawny kind of skin, and then variations of browns and reds in their hair.
And the Chimer, from what I remember, are more human skin tones. They're not dark skin. They're not gold skin. That's more kind of in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
The Dunmer come to worship the Tribunal as their new gods. Fair enough.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Following their teachings and supplanting the Daedric patrons of the Chimer. The nomadic and frankly oppressed minority of the Ashnard tribes that we talked about, that are on the outskirts, second class, lower class, not even, like, these are your refuse. We don't care about you.
Right.
Decry the Tribunal as false gods and continue the Chimer traditions, especially those of Daedric worship.
Okay.
So for thousands of years, the Divine Tribunal used their power and leadership to protect the Dunmer from foreign invasion and later from Dagoth who was also immortal because he had also stolen the power from the heart of Lorkhan.
Man, Lorkhan's heart gets around.
The Dunmer would eventually get into conflict with the Elysian Empire from Cyrodiil, as the Dunmer and the Elysian Empire were both vying for the Black Marsh city of Stormholt. So the Elysian Empire is kind of one of the early empires. It's after the Aelid Empire.
Okay.
When all the, I don't know what they're called actually, because they're not Imperials yet, but basically the people of Cyrodiil are all enslaved by the Aelid Empire. They fight them off. They become the Elysian Empire. That eventually dissolves, becomes another empire. That dissolves. Then the final empire is the Septim Empire. So
right. Yeah, that's right.
So this is kind of the first empire of Cyrodiil.
Mm-hmm.
We don't quite know what happened with the whole war. There were decided victories for the Elysian Empire and the Dunmer, but in the end, the Dunmer were still holding Stormhold in the Second Era when we see it in Elder Scrolls Online. So it's like the Dunmer won in the end,
Yeah.
The Dunmer again got into conflict with the Second Empire.
Oh.
The Riemann Empire, as Riemann II initiated an invasion of Morrowind in 2840 of the First Era.
Okay.
For almost a century, the Empire tried to subdue the Dunmer and the Tribunal. And then even after Riemann II's death at Dunmer hands, his successors...
Right.
This is a name for you. Brazollus Dor.
What did he do to the door?
Brazolusdor.
How do you Brazollus a door? I
don't know.
I'm concerned.
But that is Riemann II's illegitimate son.
Who took over... This is giving evil dictator vibes through and through.
And Riemann III, who succeeded Brazollus Dor when he died under suspicious circumstances.
Of course. I mean, here's... side note. We do not have enough people telling emperors to keep it in their pants. Because your legacy and your own life can be completely undone by bastard children. I just don't understand this.
Riemann III succeeds Brazolas Dor at 14.
Oh,
and both of these emperors just continue this war. And
well, he's 14. He doesn't know better. He's just like, my dad thought this was okay.
So from 2840, we are fighting for a long time. The final year of the First Era is 2920.
Oh, wow.
And both sides are nearing exhaustion. So it's
of course.
80 years later.
Oh, man. There are people who were born, lived, and died. There are numerous people who were born, lived, and died who did not know a time outside of that war.
Right. And after disastrous imperial defeat at Bodrum and then Dunmer's catastrophic defeat at Ald-Marak, both sides finally enter peace talks.
Thank you. That's nice to have. Peace.
And then there's a wrench thrown into the plans.
Oh, no.
When the Morag Tong, which is the Assassin's Guild that predates the Dark Brotherhood, basically the Dark Brotherhood is a splinter off of the Morag Tong,
okay,
kills Riemann III and his heir.
No! What?
And Riemann III's successor, the Akavare potentate, Versudu Shai, Shaie, Shai?
I can't.
Signs the servant truce with the Dunmer, ending the imperial invasion with a de facto victory for the Morrowind and making it the only nation in Tamriel to never be controlled by the Second Empire, ending the First Era of Morrowind.
What a roller coaster that is.
I wanted to dive more into that last fight, but there's honestly not a ton from what I found.
I find that some people are not as fascinated with battles as I am. Just the tactics of it all and the unexpected circumstances and having to pivot in order to win or being unable to pivot to lose or being unprepared in a way you didn't realize. Like, that stuff's fascinating to me.
All this stuff like the imperial defeat at Bodrum or the catastrophic defeat at Ald-Marak would basically, this is before the games, so we don't play these.
Right.
They would be a story in a book. Now, how detailed does that get? Is it more poetic? Do you have to tease it out? Because even the Morag Tong killing Riemann III and his heir is not actually named. It is in a book on the Dark Brotherhood and talks about the predecessor of the Dark Brotherhood killing emperors.
Right, exactly.
So you kind of have to read and
you are the meme of the guy with the string and the map going crazy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Which is why Aramithia's podcast is called Written Uncertainty.
Yes.
So
yeah,
at least that's what I feel. Probably right, but
yeah.
Anyway, so that's the first era of Morrowind. I'm going to get notes, I'm sure.
The first era of Morrowind.
Just the first era.
That's just the
second
first era.
The second era is actually a longer entry.
Oh.
Because we have more information because we actually play games in the second era.
Right, so you're able to discover more. Okay. But that is... So, by the second era, the Dunmer officially look the way that we know them to look like now.
Yes.
I was going to say the way they're supposed to, but I guess that doesn't matter. But yet, we have some of the people they worship look half like them.
So we can actually meet Vivek in Morrowind, which is in the third era, because, again, immortal at this point.
Yeah.
Although we do kill one of them, I think, in Morrowind. I don't know. Needless to say, you'll be playing Morrowind.
Gosh, that's so... So there was Morrowind, and then there was Oblivion, and then there was Skyrim. Skyrim, right? Is that the order?
Yes.
Okay.
If you're starting from Morrowind. If you want to go all the way back, it was Arena, then...
There was No, I know the first one was Arena.
And then Daggerfall.
Yes.
And then there was like a couple offshoots because you have... Oh, there's that one that takes place in the Imperial Mage College. I can't remember what it's called. It's like... Battlespire.
Okay.
Battlespire, and then you have Redguard, and then you get to Morrowind, and then you get to... Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was around Morrowind or around Oblivion that you got those cell phone games as well. Now you have other stuff like Blades and Legends. Well, actually, Legends is canceled, but you can still play it.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right. So we're playing Morrowind because...
I think Morrowind's the best one to play. If our patrons want to see, like... No, actually, I think Morrowind is still the best one to play.
I think contextually it makes the most sense.
Yeah.
To play. So as long as we can get it going.
We may mod it up a little bit, but yeah.
Are we going to be able to go to the guy that goes...
No, that's in Shivering Isles. That's in Oblivion.
Oh, I thought that was Morrowind. Never mind.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
What did you say? What did you say? That was a meme for a while in the
That was a meme.
Filthy pickpocket.
The voice acting is just...
Do you know why? I think we've covered this, but do you remember why?
Well, because they only hired like 6 of them for the
They only
whole
hired...
game.
They had more than 6, but they only hired a handful of people for all the characters, but also nobody had any... I'm sure Patrick Stewart had some idea because they gave him, here's reams of information about the world so you can get into this. But all the lines were recorded in alphabetical order.
Oh, that's so... I don't understand this.
This is early days, so they don't do that now. But.
I know. No, they actually have people act. Because voice actors actually have fans that follow them, too. It's easier to keep up with that now with social media.
Oblivion was recorded all in alphabetical order. Which is why things change tone so much during a conversation.
I can't wait to be awkwarded out by it. Yeah.
Well, luckily, Morrowind doesn't have a ton of dialogue.
Oh, okay, cool.
It does not have nearly the amount of dialogue that Oblivion did. It has a ton of dialogue, but it's all written.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot less voice acting in Morrowind.
Well, that'll be interesting. So that'll be the Thursday after this releases to the public. And as we mentioned before, on all Thursdays, we play a long form Let's Play in the sense of we're going to finish the game.
It will actually probably be the Friday after this releases because this will be releasing the weekend before July 4th. So it'll be on July 5th.
We're Americans, so 4th of July. July. Oh, shoot. Maybe July 6th.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Just keep an eye on our socials and you'll know. And then at least you'll know all Thursdays are still going strong with Firewatch.
And soon Mass Effect 2.
And soon Mass Effect 2. And you got to be a patron if you want to make some of the big decisions in Mass Effect 2, guys.
Yeah.
But don't.
And even the live choices on our YouTube channel, patron votes count for twice.
Yeah, patron votes. Patron votes are weighted in the chat on YouTube. So get your opinion heard. But with that,
thank you guys for listening.
Thanks so much, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.